Santa Ramon friends. So we are into October. It's exciting. So I went to the store and I grabbed a big pumpkin thinking I really feel like drawing a pumpkin today because I'm feeling so like it feels like fall in the air and I'm getting excited about Halloween. So I chose the pumpkin I chose has this fun top to it. I'm a sucker for a good handle on a pumpkin. So I bought this and I thought that would be fun to do our art with today. But before I get going, I want to talk to you about a quick thing. So when you're doing your art, sometimes you might come across parts that are hard, right? And you might think, oh man, this is kind of hard. And you might not always even like the product you come up with your art, right? Like sometimes it's not exactly what you had in mind. But that's okay because it's about the process. That's a hard word. It's about the process. It's about the actual doing of the activity and learning something new. And so inside your brain, you're learning something new. So you may not like the first time what your product is, but then after you keep practicing it again and again and again, you get better and better and add more information into it. Eventually, you'll start to really like the products you come up with. And you might get lucky and like the product you get today. But if you don't like the product you get today, don't feel bad about it because you learned something. Your brain learned something from it. The other thing, so that's process versus product. The other thing I want to talk about that goes along with this kind of is growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And the older kids might have heard this before, but that kind of means that when something comes up for you that feels hard, something that you think, oh man, this is a really hard one. I don't know if I can do this. You got to remember deep down, down into your heart or into your head or wherever you feel it in your body, you say, I know I can do hard things. I've done hard things before. And then you remind yourself of the hard things you've done. Like, you might not remember this, but you learned how to walk, right? And when you were a baby, you didn't know how to walk. So you had to learn how to stand. And then you might have crawled a little bit and then stood up. And then you did a little standing. And then you would start to do some walking. And then you would walk a little bit and then go and crawl. And then get back up and walk again. So it was little baby steps, right? Literally baby steps. To then be able to walk like you do now. Now you can run and walk and jump and do all those things. It's the same idea with anything you learn, guys. It's just now you're more aware of what you're learning, right? So if something feels hard, don't panic and think, oh my gosh, I can't do this. It's hard. Oh my gosh, I'm no good at this. That's okay. You say, wait a minute, I've done hard things. I've learned how to walk. You might know how to ride a bike. You've learned how to ride a bike. You might know how to ride a scooter. You might be getting better at reading, right? So you've done really hard things that you don't even realize you've done. So you're going to try to remember some of those things and say to yourself, no, I know I can do it. It's hard, but I can go through and do it. And remember, it doesn't matter what the product is. So if this is a little hard sometimes and you think, oh, it's not perfect. It doesn't look exactly the way I want it to look. That's okay, because this is about the process of doing it. It is not about that finished thing. This is not going to go in an art museum somewhere. It might go in your refrigerator, but it's not going to go in an art museum. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the product is. I hope that makes sense to you guys. We're going to be talking a lot about having persistence, even when things feel hard, because that's what it takes to learn something new. And you guys are all capable of it. Even when it feels hard, you can do it. So you got to trust that about yourself, okay? All right. So I will show you what our activity is up next. All right.
Hey kiddos, so for your art, instead of doing like the normal pumpkin picture, I thought it'd be fun to do like a weird angle of a pumpkin. So we're going to do the top, from the top down. That's why I chose this handle that's all funky, because I thought that would be more fun to draw. All right, so I will show you how you're going to do this up next. All right, here we go.
Okay, kiddos. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make your piece of paper a square. And the way to do that, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but you take one corner of your paper and you take it down to the bottom edge and you make it so that you kind of fold it so that it's straight across this bottom. Now, you don't have to fold it super hard, just sort of do a soft fold because you don't really care about the fold. And then you're going to take a pair of scissors. Where did I put my scissors? Uh-oh, where are my scissors? Oh, there. I'm going to take a pair of scissors and you're going to cut. You're going to cut this and you will find that you end up with a square. You can bother, if you want to bother to get out a ruler and measure it and do that whole thing, you can. But if you're lazy,
voila, it works. And just hold on to this. We'll figure out something to do with that. You can just pop it in your art bag. Okay, so now you have a square piece of paper. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I am going to draw the pumpkin from that top part like I showed you. So what I'm going to do first is, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but when the handle came around, right, sort of a big handle, and it twisted, right, and then it had like little things that came off of it. So I'm going to make it twisty. I'm going to make it skinnier at the top, and then it's going to come out. And when it comes out, I don't know if you noticed this too, but it kind of comes down onto the pumpkin, because it kind of grows out if you've ever really looked carefully at one of those in a pumpkin. And then I'm going to have the lines come up. And the way you can make it sort of look that twisty way is if you twist your lines, it'll start to look kind of like a real pumpkin handle. And if you happen to have a pumpkin at home, you can check out the handle and see how yours looks. Then what you're going to do, because we're looking down on this thing, right? Then what you're going to do is you're going to start to do the lines of the pumpkin out, okay? Right, so it comes all the way out. So you're gonna essentially fill your whole paper with the pumpkin, and you won't see the whole pumpkin, right? We're not actually looking at the whole. We're not gonna see the whole pumpkin when the picture's finished. You won't see an entire pumpkin shape. You're just seeing the top part of the pumpkin. See how we're doing that? Isn't that kind of fun? And now we're going to color it in. And the way we'll pretend the light is coming from this way. So we'll have this be a little bit darker because there's probably a little shadow from the handle onto the pumpkin here. And then it'll be a little darker in there because you know how it goes in. So if you show that it's darker, then it'll look like it's indented in a little bit. And then it'll be lighter up on this part of the pumpkin. And then it'll start to get darker again. So what I want to do is to really get those colors to show. I'm going to start with yellow. I'm using my oil pastels, just so you know. So I'm starting with my yellow, and I'm going to start with my yellow all along here. And I'm going to really make it a thing. Make it all yellow. Doop, 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 doop. Because the light is hitting all around there because we're looking from up above down at this pumpkin. I thought it was just sort of a fun perspective, and it's fun. I love playing around with that stuff and like not having the whole pumpkin be on your paper. I think that's kind of especially fun and like extra artsy to do it that way. Sometimes artists don't show the whole thing. I don't know if you've ever been to Rustic Bakery, but there's a lady who does chalk drawings in there, and she does really cool like pumpkins and chickens and eggs. If you ever get to go in there, check out the art. And the woman who does the art there, she lives in Petaluma. Her name is Sylvia, and so she's nearby. My daughter even took an art class with her once. It was really fun. Okay, so you're going to fill this all up. All the way around. And the trick with the oil pastels today is you're really going to be layering them. Because by layering them, that's how you're going to get a lot of color on this. So you're going to just keep going. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my orange and I'm going to go into these spots and start to get this darker. And I'm also going to go over my yellow some because remember, it is still orange, but I'm not going to totally cover my yellow. I'm just going to start to get in there. And if you notice, I don't know if you noticed, but I turn my paper as I color. It's maybe just because I'm lazy. I like my hand being in that direction. So I'd rather turn the paper than turn my hand. It's kind of like when you're cutting with scissors, when you turn the paper and you don't like move your hand all over the place and make it really hard for yourself. This is just me taking the easy way. Which, you know what? If it works for you, sometimes it's not a bad way to go. All right, so I'm filling all this in. Sorry, you have to sit and watch me color. Maybe you're coloring with me so you're not bored. Okay, fill this all in. And now I'm going to go to the edges because remember, this part was supposed to be darker too. Remember we talked about that, so I'm going to have this come up. And the yellow, I'm not going to leave, I don't want to leave like a big yellow stripe around the middle because that'll look kind of dorky. But we'll get there. We'll figure out how to add other color. We're just going to get color all around here. And we're just going to keep layering our oil pastels and get darker and darker and darker and darker. Hope you guys can see this. And the other artist you can see, Sylvia does a lot of this kind of work with chalk and stuff. She uses a lot of chalk when she draws and paints. But if you know the artist George O'Keeffe, she was sort of the queen of looking at natural things, and she didn't like to draw it as it was. She would make it like really giant. So she'd like focus in on like the innermost part of the flower and paint that. And she'd paint it huge, but sometimes you wouldn't even know exactly what it was. You'd think, I think that might be an iris, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so now I've got that part. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lighter one, my peach colored one. I'm going to start to go over all of it with my peach. And I'm going to start to do a little more blending. You see how when I go over the orange with the peach, it starts to do that cool blendy thing? You see how that works? And it really does start to, the more you layer oil pastels, the cooler it works. Okay, so I'm just layering and layering. And this peach color is kind of nice because it's definitely an orangey color, but it's not super dark, so it lets the yellow come through it still. Okay. And now what I want you to do is, now take the red or the brown, and you're going to really start to darken this up. In fact, I think I'm going to use the brown. Start to really darken this part up so that it really starts to look like there's a shadow in there. And if they see that, if it looks darker, it's going to make it look like it's going in, like there's it's concave a little bit, right? And that's what you want, because that's what pumpkins usually do. They usually come up and then they go like in where the stem comes out. So you want that to be darker, because that'll make that look like that is happening. And you'll feel as you're coloring with these that the more you layer, the cooler it is. Like you feel it start to blend, and then you don't see any white paper left. I love that. That's where you know you're really doing some hard work. And this is one of those activities that you might feel like, oh man, I want to give this one up. And if you need to take a break and walk away, that's so fine. Do that and then come back to it later. You don't need to finish it all in one sitting. Okay. Okay, like that. All right, so now I might do the same thing down here a bit because I want it to really look like it's darker. Now you're happy that we made the paper square, right? Because it's that much less to color. This would be a lot of coloring if you had the whole paper. It really adds up. So you're just going to keep layering the colors. Right. All right, then, once you feel like you've done a lot of layering, you can always take a break from the layering and go to the little handle for a little while. The stem, that's what I might do because I'm getting tired of my coloring down here. And that's okay to get tired of it, then you go back to it. You take a break. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my black. And I'm going to just do some of the lines of black.
fact, I might turn to my gray here so it's not quite so dark. I want some of the lines to be dark, but not all of them, I think, because it feels like it might get too dark. You know what I mean? So I'm going to mix up. Yeah, I like that gray. We'll mix up some grays in there and have the stem lines come this way. Like that. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and then I'll have it be a little darker down in here. Come on up. Oh, do you guys hear Mrs. O'Hara in the hallway? All right, have it come up like that. There we go. So that's kind of cool, right? That kind of makes it stand out. Now, the next step you can do if you want to get really tricky, you can either see, I'm not really liking this down here because I still see white paper and that bugs me. So I have a choice. I can either keep going over with the oil pastel, or if you want to get fancy, and it's okay with your parents, you have to ask them if it's okay with them first. What you can do is you can take some Q-tips, and I just grabbed some oil from my kitchen. I just grabbed some almond oil, but you could use olive oil or any kind of oil. I used baby oil last year with the kids and it worked. And you put a little Q-tip in there, and then what happens is you can smear it. Now you see if I just had a lot on there at once, so it went right through the paper. So just make sure you don't put too much, just the tiniest bit. And if the Q-tip feels like, but do you see how it blends? Isn't that kind of cool? If you feel like it's too much, but it will lighten it up. See, that lightened that up quite a bit from that. So if you don't like how light it gets, don't do so much of it. Just do it maybe a little bit for some blending. Or if you don't have a Q-tip, I used a paper towel too. So you can just take a little bit of a paper towel or a cotton, a cotton ball. Now, again, if you go too heavy with the oil, do you see how it's doing weird things to the paper? So do be aware of that. Don't go too much with it. But you can kind of blend your colors in. And you might really like how that looks. And it makes it so you don't see as much white, which I like, because I don't always like seeing the white paper or the marks, like the crayon, the oil pastel marks. It bugs me when it doesn't look like it's the actual, I think it makes it blend more and makes it look like the actual thing a little bit more than a drawing of the thing, if that makes sense. But do you notice that I'm not putting it back in the oil right now? I have a lot on my paper towel, and I just don't need very much more. And I don't want that to happen on too much of my paper, because I don't really like how that looks. But you see how I'm just smearing it? In fact, you might not even need much oil at all as I'm doing this. I'm realizing the paper towel alone might be enough. If you notice you're starting to rip your paper, though, be careful, because the paper is pretty thick, but it's not super thick, right? And I'm just going to go all the way through and really, really try to blend it. So it's kind of cool. So it really looks like how a pumpkin might look, right? And you notice I'm also going, when I'm doing my blending, I'm going with the way the section of the pumpkin is. I'm not going up and down like that, because that might do something weird to it. So I'm sort of going with the texture of the pumpkin, the way the side of the pumpkin will go. But do you see how now it's like sort of nice and smooth looking? So that's kind of cool, huh? And you can keep adding more. Like if you're like, oh, I want this to have more orange in it, you can always add more orange. And now once you've put a little oil down, you'll feel that it's extra. It blends really easily now. Like it's a really blendy feeling now, okay? So now you can really add more in if you want to add more color. And the last thing you'll do is, sorry, I get a little distracted, is you can take black. I think I'm going to use my brown on this one, and I'm going to put in the pumpkin lines again, so it's not pencil this time. Like that. And I think that helps to make it look a little more pumpkin-y too, right? It's that same color. I think black might be too dark, so I don't think I'd go with the black. I think I would stick with this dark brownish red color that we have. But I think that looks pretty cool, don't you? And then lastly, if you want to get really tricky, you can decide where you'd want some white to be, where you want like the light to really be hitting it. So you can, maybe I want the light to really go there, or really go there. You see how I'm doing that? I'm just layering a little bit of white on there. and that might make it look even lighter. And then if you decide, okay, oops, sorry, you like the light over here, maybe you want to make this side a little darker, because that's what would naturally happen, right? If this side is really light, probably this is going to be a little bit darker. So you can add a little orange in there. And you see, you just kind of keep blending it. And you're going to find that the blending is really fun on these. All right. So I hope you have fun with this, guys. It is fun. I thought it would be a nice thing to have up in your house to make it feel a little bit more seasonal and like fall and getting excited about Halloween and all those things. So I hope you have fun with that. And I will see you next week. All right. Remember, don't get frustrated with yourself. You're going to have a growth mindset, right? If it's hard, that's good. That means you're learning things and you can do hard things. Perseverance is a great quality. All right, kiddos, have fun.